Oh, I am so glad that you found your way back to the Yoga and Black podcast. But if you're new to the show, welcome. The show is all about sharing the stories of Black yoga and holistic wellness providers all around the world. And the goal is to bring more community awareness to the Black folks that not only practice yoga, but teach it too, to show our community that we too participate in these practices to help us heal and lead fuller lives. So, without me talking anymore, please, please, I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Yoga and Black podcast. As always, you've got your host here, Tierney, and I am thrilled to be joined by Krystal Williams-Payne of Los Angeles, California. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist along with an awesome yoga instructor. So I am really excited to get to know more about her and along with you as well. So Krystal, I'm shutting up. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm super excited to be here. Yes, so I'm Krystal. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist out of the state of California. I work with Black and Brown individuals that want to form a better relationship with food and exercise by ending diet culture. And I also help them feel their feelings through movement, through sound, and through talk therapy. So I've been doing that for over a decade with the sound and movement piece. It's been within the last 3 years. And yeah, I've just been on a roll and on a mission to be able to support my Black and Brown humans that are out there.
That is so dope. I
Yeah.
love when I get yoga therapists in here, like, or
Yeah.
at least that have either the profession of therapy and then
Yeah.
yoga, or if somehow combine the two. I love it because
Yeah.
people tend to treat yoga like therapy. And I'm like,
Hmm.
yes, but
Hmm.
there's some
Hmm.
extra things that you can get there. And that's when I'm like, I need to direct you to a professional for that. And
Yeah.
then when y'all exist, I'm like, yes, you can get it all. You can get it all. Do you ever find that it's beneficial for you in both professions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think once I got reintroduced to yoga, because at first I honestly could not stand the practice. I did not like it. I was like, I think mostly because I think where I was mentally and I was so rooted in diet culture that I didn't really even give yoga a chance. And then I got reintroduced to it. And I think post being reintroduced to it, I've learned how necessary it is for integration, specifically when it comes to like the therapeutic world,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also to how I can also support people on the mat and even off the mat too. So
Yeah.
it has been such a match made in heaven for me personally. And I am so happy that I was reintroduced to the practice. So happy I was reintroduced to it because it changed just my perspective and my world. And it introduced me to so many different people too. And I'm just like, it came at the right time. And
Nice.
and especially with me wanting to, like, how can I do a little bit more in the therapeutic space? And so it's been awesome so far.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned that yoga found its way back to you. Can we talk about when you first experienced it? Because I love
Yeah.
hearing those stories.
Yeah. So I was first introduced to it when I was in college, a little bit after college, I'll say that. And, like a friend was like, "Oh, come with me. Let's go do yoga." And I'm like, "Yoga, what? Like, all you're doing is stretching. Like, and this is boring. And it's nothing but white people in here. Like, I'm not trying to do this." And I'm all like, this isn't going to give me the results that I need. I'm trying to lose weight. So if I'm going to exercise, I have to specifically do this movement, not yoga. You're wasting my time. So that was kind of the
Felt.
mindset that was there. And
Very felt,
so,
yes.
yeah. And I remember going and I was just like, this is boring. Like, oh my gosh. So all those things that I had mentioned to you. Then, that same friend was just like, oh, keep, was just kept kind of poking, like, let's just go. And I was just like, okay. So then she takes me to a hot yoga class. Ah, I'm talking about, I was heated at the time because I was like, I didn't know it was supposed to be this hot. And also, too, I'm like, no one told me that. Like, you didn't warn me how hot this was going to be. and, and I felt like when I went into that space, it felt, I didn't know what was going on. It was happening way too fast. I felt like at the time in the instructor, it felt like it was like a drill sergeant. Like it just felt like
Mm-hmm.
boom, 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 boom. And I was just like, I can't, this is too much for me. I hate this. I would never
Yeah.
come here again. And I, stopped it for a while and I was studying for my clinical exam. And just a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, I was studying for my clinical exam. And I was scheduled to go to acupuncture because I really wanted the day before my exam, I really wanted to just kind of relax my body and just kind of, to get my mind right because I
Mm-hmm.
really needed to pass this exam to get my license. And so my the acupuncturist, she hit me up and she was just like, "Hey, I have to cancel." And I was like, "Why?
Dang.
I got a clinical. I'm counting on you."
Right. It's like I was
And
really rooting for this to be
yes,
something good for
I
me
know.
here.
100%. And so one of my coworkers at the time, he was like, "Well, how about you go do yoga?" And I was like,
Not this
"Yoga?
again.
Yeah, no. Why do you keep bringing this up?" And so he was like, just do yoga. Like, I'm sure it's going to like help you out. And I'm thinking, the last time I went to a yoga class, I was hot, I was frustrated, and I felt like I didn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, I trust you. I will do it. And so next thing you know, like I, just looked up like, studios near me. I found out there was a studio right down the street. And I went in just thinking it was going to be a regular kind of like, now I know the terms now, vinyasa class. It was Kundalini. I had no
Ooh,
idea what Kundalini was. Zero idea. I just thought
very
like
different. Yeah.
this is the only time that was available for me, and right near the house. Let me just go. No idea what it was. I went in there and I was like, oh, what the heck is this? I'm breathing. I left out of there feeling like a wet noodle. I was so like calm, relaxed, and just like I slept like a baby that night. And so
Nice.
afterwards, I took my exam the next day. I passed it with flying colors. And
Yes.
from that day, I was like, yoga did that. Yoga did that for me. But I think it also opened up my eyes that I didn't know that there was different types of yoga. I thought it
Yeah.
was just kind of like one like style. And
Mm-hmm.
so it made me kind of open up like, oh, well, what I just experienced was a lot different from that those other couple times that I went to the studio. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went back to that studio and there was like a gentle class and I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can pay attention. The instructor's right in front of me. So she's demoing for me, and helping me out. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, so it's not necessarily, it was like, A, I think I need to find the right studio and also the right, the practice in itself.
Right.
And so I kept attending that class, that studio, and that was honestly when I first got introduced to my to a Black yoga teacher. I'd never seen a Black yoga
Yes.
teacher before, and she was at that studio. And I went in the class, and I saw her come in, and I was like, "I'm
It's
coming
like
to
you're
your class every
teaching? Oh,
time."
thank goodness.
Yes, I know. I was like, wow. And so again, that opened up my eyes again. And then it was just kind of like, well, why aren't I seeing more of that? Why did I have that kind of belief system that I couldn't occupy this space? Like all these questions I was kind of asking. And so that was also around the time when during the pandemic, I started to really try to form a different relationship with food and with my body.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I had to do, especially with exercise, is I had to find exercises that wasn't rooted in diet culture, or wasn't rooted in a diet for me. And it
Yeah.
was hiking, yoga, and at the time pole dancing. And so
Nice.
yeah, and
I
so
always
I,
wanted to try that. I mean, I have tried it. I mean, like seriously taking multiple
yeah,
classes because it's usually like a bachelorette kind of a
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah. Beautiful, beautiful community. It really is. I was doing it for a couple years. It's such a beautiful
Nice.
community. And I had said, well, yoga honestly is that I can continuously do, because that is the space. When I found my studio, that was the space where, you know, they asked, like, check in with your body. And they said, like, breathe, versus
Mm.
all the other forms of movement. I'm holding my breath the whole time. And
Oh,
so I was just like, and since then, I kind of really kind of dedicated even more into the practice. And then I decided during the pandemic to, that same studio was offering the 200-hour YTT. And I said, why not? Let's do this. And I've been a teacher ever since. Well, that was a long-winded story, but yes, that's what happened.
that's I love when a story has all of the layers and all of the
Yeah,
development to it. That's a
yeah.
beautiful story, and I really love hearing these types of stories because I want to see so much of the similarities that we may all have in
Mm-hmm.
our introduction to yoga and then where we are now with it. And there are common
Yeah.
threads where we'll know about it or hear about it and be like, that's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily see ourselves in it. And
Yeah.
once we do get the moment to practice it, especially depending on where you go and who you go
Yeah.
to, it might not be, a comforting experience because
I agree.
I can really relate to that. I had that exact same experience where my very first experience with it was DVDs in a gym class in high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did not necessarily understand what was going on, and it was approached in a fitness mindset. And then once
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
found something else in adulthood, like I can't remember how many years post college it was, but um that's when it hit me. I'm like, oh, this is this is what it is. I was
Yeah. Yeah.
totally wrong because the media was showing me one thing. I was
Yeah.
seeing and experiencing something else, and it just didn't align with me. I wasn't seeing myself in any of the spaces
Mm-hmm.
either.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it took a long time for that to really click for me.
Yeah.
And not to mention not knowing that there were other types of yoga, or
Yeah.
at least yoga asana practices out
Asanas.
there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because when I was thinking it was all the same, and I'm like, this is hard. And I mean, I don't
Yeah.
mind it because I was really,
Yeah.
in my trying to get back into athletic world. But I'm like, but that's not really what I was here for, because I had a couple different therapists recommend it for me
Mm.
as a practice for the things that I was going through mentally.
Yeah.
And when I'm like, I don't know, I still feel a little anxious. It wasn't until I experienced something else where I was like, oh, okay, now I see why you recommended it. Thank
Yeah.
you. I didn't get it. I didn't understand,
Mm-hmm.
and now I do. I love that story because it's what kind of connects us all. In this is
Yeah.
that and like so many others that we now approach that are meeting us, and we may be their first Black yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, I know, I've
Yeah.
been there, right there with you,
Been there.
so that we share that all in common. So that's what this whole platform is about, is putting a loudspeaker to
Yeah.
these experiences that we have, so that folks know you're not alone at
Yeah.
all. Like, we have all had the same or similar journeys into this. So for me to just stop talking about that, because I'm so dying to get to know more about your journey into the therapeutic world. Um,
Yeah.
what interested you in it at first, and I guess what types of practices do you practice?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you. Yeah. if I'm fully transparent, if I go all the way back in time to grad school, I really was at a point in my career. I was still kind of like in social services, and I was at a point in my career where I was like kind of feeling a little stuck, but knowing that there's something more that is available to me. I just need
Hmm.
to kind of just go out and reach it, but I didn't know what that was. And so I had this saying that, like, hey, if you don't know what to do, then you need to sit back and pick up a book or learn something. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go to grad school. And my friend was like, my friend goes, she was in grad school at the time, and I was like, what do you think? Like, she was like, Krystal, you're really great at, speaking to people, listening, and kind of like giving advice. I have never been to therapy at this point. And so I was like, oh, like I'm like a counselor. Like I've heard of that. I could do it. So I went to grad school, honestly, was trying to buy time, but still kind of interested of figuring out what was this counseling therapy thing? What is it? And I was introduced to some phenomenal professors that was there who really believed in me, really pushed me, and said, Krystal, this is it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need you to continue to pursue this. And I started to grow confidence, kind of, I think, a little bit more in myself, and continued on with this journey. So I've worked with individuals from victims of crime. I've worked with folks in the foster care system, LGBTQ community, homeless services, um, uh, kind of really kind of just staying in those realms or different marginalized communities,
Yeah.
working with
Yeah.
individuals and families and kids. And so I really started to open up my eyes even more so too about how there's only, I think, about like 3% of Black people who are in the mental health field or therapists specifically.
No wonder it's so
And
hard to find one. Jeez.
yeah,
I didn't realize
and
that
I
it was that percentage.
Yeah, and I think also too, and that's a whole another rabbit hole we can go into as well, because you get into like the insurance aspect of it, and
Don't get me
anyways,
started.
and so it's one of those things where it's like, oh wow, like just talking about representation, it really does make an impact. And I remember going, and when I was working at different type of nonprofits and different organizations, how with working with the families, how relieved they were with seeing me kind of come in the building. And also too, I identify as queer, so that also gave certain communities a sense of kind of relief and
Yeah.
relatability
Yeah.
while working with them. And so I started a private practice back in 2020. And, it was happening where, with the whole, you know, I said political and racial tension that was happening back in 2020, as well as the um, um, global trauma with COVID. I
Yeah.
really wanted to step out and really provide and hold space for people who look like me. And it was heavy on myself, it was heavy on everyone. And so I really wanted to, yeah, start a private practice and really kind of gear my attention towards the Black and Brown community.
Hmm.
And um, so started that, and with I, I've always kind of been in a little bit of the lane of, how is trauma, how is specifically a collective trauma, how is fear, how is anxiety, how is that impacting your relationship with food? Sometimes we tend to mindlessly sometimes like eat when we're kind of anxious, or maybe just not even eat at
Hmm.
all. And or so I really wanted to not only hold the space for, like I said, being able to support people in this collective trauma, but also really introduce people to forming a better relationship with food and exercise. And so, with kind of unlearning certain messages that we have around food, certain messages that we have around like exercise, and develop kind of like this radical approach of what does an anti-diet life look like. And so that has really kind of been holding on strong greatly. And through the midst of that, I kind of recognize that ultimately I'm really helping people feel their feelings, which is
Yeah.
sometimes is extremely hard to do, especially if you were never taught how to do that, or if it was just never encouraged, especially when you were younger. So, with helping folks feel their feelings, I utilize, because I do sound healing as well. And so I integrate that too, kind of even in the therapeutic space. Also with like kind of with movement, because I do also specialize in grief. And so we're working a little bit more into, hey, we're noticing that we always talk about kind of emotions are kind of in the body. So we're going to kind of
Mm-hmm.
notice it. If it's in the throat, it's in the shoulder. What happens if I roll the shoulders down, open the chest, lift the chin up, right? And so see what
Mm-hmm.
happens with curiosity instead of judgment and criticism. And so with those integrations, it has really transformed um, not only my personal clinical experience as a whole, because it was a lot of unlearning that I had to do, as
Right.
far as like how I needed to show up as a therapist.
Mm.
Because I think in grad school we're given this generic way and not really considering culture, not really considering other forms of healing. And so when I had
Yes.
so when I had to unlearn some of those things, I am now relearning by integrating movement, by integrating sound into the therapeutic space. And it has definitely opened my clients' eyes, opened my eyes even more. And it's been a beautiful experience so far.
Mm. I am so glad you brought up the cultural context of the profession, and that's
Hmm.
exactly why I kind of was surprised by that percentage that you gave earlier, that
Hmm.
3%. And it makes sense why so many of us also don't participate in therapy or therapeutic
Hmm.
practices because, yeah, I'll just say it. My experience with therapy has been very white.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to knock the help that they've provided me because they definitely have. But it gets to a
Hmm.
point where they can't help me anymore because the things that I really do need help with, they can't understand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that that just permeates every experience that we have, whether it's in therapy, whether it's at work, whether it's in our interpersonal relationships and yoga. Having
Hmm.
cultural context really can color how your experience is with that
Hmm.
thing. um, Something I've noticed in my own experience is I will seek out more of us because I want to have that familiar experience, and at least that acknowledgement of I understand what you're going through. I've
Hmm.
probably been there too, and I relate and have some tools that I could probably share.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll still take classes or services or anything from white folks or whatever, but that's not always going to be my first choice
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
of that very thing. So, with that in mind, and because you've spoken on some of the practices that you have already, could you tell me a little bit more about what your, whether it's your therapy sessions or your yoga, tell me a little bit more about what that experience is like if I were to be walking in and wanting to participate in your thing?
Yeah. So, most, if not all, of my sessions are virtual. And because I'm providing a therapeutic service, it has to be out of the state of California. And so, which is a bummer. I'm just going to call that out there. You know what I mean? I'm going to call that out. It's such a bummer. And I think it was even really highlighted when during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
especially like kind of like during lockdown, if I have room to like in my practice to bring on more people and they're in New York or they're in Georgia, they're in X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z, I'm available. I can still see them. And so, because maybe the clinicians that was in that particular area, maybe they're all booked up, but hey, I'm in California. I'm fine. I got people. You know what I mean? Like, or like I
Exactly.
have openings.
You're
So,
right.
anyways, I just want to call that out. Like, and I think that,
That's a
and
systemic
looking,
thing that we can, yeah, definitely address
yeah,
at some point. Yeah, because
yeah,
what's up with that?
yeah. Yeah. And so I know a lot of therapists, myself included, are really fighting for, kind of like a national, opening,
Yeah.
in regards to that. So all of it is in for therapeutic services, everything is virtual. Um, and I have this idea, or I have this particular mindset that because I'm a therapist or have whatever credentials behind my name, that um, trust is earned and not just given to me because of it.
Right.
And so, and really sharing with folks that I'm in the room too, and so I'm here with you, and really wanting to again hold space and wanting for you to feel brave in
Mm.
this alignment that we're trying to build here, and knowing that the slower we go, the faster we may get there.
Mm.
And even that comes into in the yoga space as well, or an asana. If we're doing an asana practice, specifically doing yin or gentle or restorative, um, really having that exact same approach as well. And so, really going on my client's pace, the individual, the human's pace. And Yeah, I think, yeah. And I use
I love
mostly
that.
kind of like I tell people too that I have like a here and now and compassionate lens. So it was to say where, like, say, hypothetically speaking, we go back in time. Our minds are like super powerful. So we may go back
Mm.
in time to childhood or the last relationship, but you might get activated right now in the present moment. And so we're going to focus on what's happening from the neck down for you, because sometimes that can give you great information and build that awareness of how that impacts your behavior changes once you feel
Yeah.
that sensation. And so that's the same thing, whether it is on, kind of virtual, in person, if we're doing an asana practice. But I'm incorporating all of that kind of in there. And I have different type of therapeutic practices that uh, I use, but it really is depending on the individual in front of me, what I'm gonna utilize or not. But for the most part, you're going to get me as the human first, and then we'll tie in some other practices that I have, in the back of my head in order to be able to support somebody.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. Absolutely lovely. While you were talking, something came up for me, and I don't know why I haven't talked about it in a while because there's been a few others that are in both the therapeutic world and yoga. But how familiar with you are goodness, if I could say words today, how familiar are you with um, some of the discourse that's been happening within the Yoga Alliance and yoga
Mm.
therapy? Are you familiar
Hmm.
with any
I'm
of
not. I
that
don't think
talk?
so.
Okay,
Mm.
because it was a few years ago, um, where it was a little bit more controversial for it to be, or at least for folks to market themselves as a yoga therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think what the Yoga Alliance was wanting to do was to ensure that there was a clear demarcation between what yoga is and what therapy is, which makes sense. Because we definitely don't want to put that
Mm-hmm.
thought in people's heads that you can replace therapy with yoga. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yoga definitely does some powerful things, but there are other things that happen within therapy that don't
Yeah.
necessarily happen in yoga. And not to mention, most yoga that you're getting in this country is not good. in the way that you think it is. So I guess that was, or what, where this question is really going is,
Mm,
what's your take on combining the two and really figuring out ways that we as a yoga teachers as a whole can really help people without them thinking that it's all one and the same.
yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's something that I muddled against too, right? Because I would hear the term yoga therapy, and I instantly thought my therapy mind was just like, oh, so, well, how's the integration? Like, how are they utilizing some
Yeah.
of the clinical practices with either asana or the yamas? And like, how are they doing that? And so I literally was kind of on the hunt for like, how are people doing this? Like, and I remember, and maybe I do. I don't know if I posed the question or I think I heard somebody pose the question too, because it was one of those things like, I'm a therapist, I'm a clinical licensed therapist, and I also am a yoga teacher. Can I call myself a yoga therapist?
Right.
And or we're doing yoga therapy. And I think I either it was I don't it was either directed to me because I wrote it out or someone else where it was just like, no, you can't. Yoga
Mm.
therapy is something completely different. And where it was more of like a how I read it and how I even learned in my 200 hour, because a yoga therapist kind of came in. I was like, oh yeah, I get to see like what is this thing. They came
Yeah.
in and it almost felt like it was almost kind of like physical therapy, but they were utilizing yoga specifically, like the asana, and maybe even integrated like the yamas and the niyamas into that. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, so that's what that is. Again, I'm so fresh. I'm trying to figure that out.
Me,
And then,
right now, me.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, because there's physical therapy, and I think maybe because we how we view it out here, asana is all yoga. Maybe
Right.
that's where this is where that connection is coming from. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's what it is. So I don't know. My handles on social media is Krystal the yoga therapist,
Hmm.
and I really struggled to even call myself that because I was like, are people going to get mad at me because I'm not doing what I was taught how it's supposed to be? But I don't operate off of supposed tos. I, my
Cheers to
wife
that.
tells me, yeah, my wife tells me that I'm a Red Bull without a cause, and I said no. There's always a cause, right? And then I said, and so it's just a matter of like these rules and stuff that you said that I'm supposed to kind of like be a part of. And I'm like, but my heart, my soul doesn't say. It says either why or why not, you
Yeah, cut
know?
it.
And
No.
so, yeah. And so I was just kind of like, no. So honestly, going back, kind of piggybacking off of your question, I think that goes back to me trying to unlearn what therapy is for me
Mm.
and recognizing that I can identify that for myself. There are these ethical and principles as far as like as a clinician
Right.
that they have for us to maintain our license, and I can still honor that, but I also have to honor me as the human. I
Hmm.
cannot be, and I think when I was in grad school, what really didn't resonate with me is I think how I was supposed to show up, how I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I was like, but that's not me. That's not my core. Like, I really don't wear cardigans. I wear sweatshirts and like my Doc Martens. Like, I wear piercings and I have tattoos all over me. Like,
Right.
I don't fit into this box. And so anyways, so as I started to redefine my relationship with who I am as a clinician, and then when yoga came into my life, and I knew, I was just like, well, there's so much evidence. I talk about trauma and talks about how emotions and trauma can get trapped in the body. And if I
Hmm.
have this new thought process of yoga and asana and even just the yamas and the niyamas too, So why can't I incorporate the two? And so I honestly took a thing where like a rebellious approach and said, no, I'm kind of going to own this and own that, this is also a beautiful way that I can incorporate healing into someone's journey. And
Yes.
I'm not going to let anyone, any board, or any other therapist that don't agree with that to stop me from to showing up. And I'm still showing up ethically. I'm still showing up with the best interest of my clients. I'm pretty transparent with my clients about this particular space. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if we're talking about trauma, if we're talking about grief and things of that nature, I may use an asana and kind of move. I may use breath work, right? I may use kind of sound, okay, I'm going to get my bowl and this is what we're going to do, right? And so, getting real time feedback and, and so now I do consider myself as a yoga therapist because I'm clinically licensed to be able to support individuals in the clinical space. And now I
Right.
have this new integration. Like if I learned EMDR, if I learned CBT, like those are all beautiful tools as well. Yoga happens to be another tool, and I'm
Right.
using it. And so,
I love
yeah,
this. Yes. Thank you for that perspective. Oh
yeah,
man. As soon as you said EMDR, I'm like, oh, I know that one.
yeah. I don't have any training in that, but I just know that that's a popular thing that people know about. So I wanted to call that out. Yeah,
It definitely had its benefits for me.
yeah.
Was not a long term
Hmm.
practice to use, but it definitely helped with the things it needed to help with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a little different. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
very first time I did it, for those that don't know, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for.
I
Eye
eye
movement.
movement desensitization. I EMD
I forget. I know
something.
it's eye
I don't know.
movement, but then I always forget what the DR is.
Hmm.
Either way, um,
Yeah.
the things I've always used are two little things in your hand that buzz, and they
Hmm.
buzz at alternate pulsations.
Yeah.
And you are meant to close your eyes, and your therapist will talk you through some things. And with the help of those sensations, you're able to um, kind of reframe the way that your body responds to certain memories
Hmm.
or feelings, and
Hmm.
process these things in a different way, so that they don't trigger you so drastically.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's not familiar with that, and it's a cool practice, but it's definitely one that you should always talk to your therapist about using, because it can get intense. It
Hmm.
can.
Yeah.
So I love that you have all of these tools available to you to help people, because we're all so uniquely different that everyone could
Yeah.
benefit from something else. And I love that you've had that opportunity to, I won't call it unlearning. I'm gonna call it relearn,
Hmm.
or at least reframe,
Hmm.
and mold it in a way that works best for you and your
Yeah.
clients. And that's
Hmm.
what should be done across the board for anybody providing a service to another person.
Yeah.
Um, there's no cookie cutter way to do anything when you're dealing with humans.
100%.
Exactly.
100%. And to feel kind of like, I think like kind of like pigeonholed into that. And it's been, I think, when we talk about like messaging, it's, in grad school, but also kind of how the media kind of portrays like therapists as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, and so it's just kind of like, either they're all really like don't have any boundaries, all fucked up, to to like just cookie cutter and just kind of like da 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 da, or have all types of stuff I've seen.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and I think that's where kind of like in the yoga space too. Like I've had people have anxiety attacks when I'm teaching yoga. I've had
Yeah.
people get really, really super triggered being in certain postures. And
Yeah.
I think because I think having a clinical mind and also experience in that front, I understand what anxiety is. I understand when we're having a trauma response and how to um, uh, regulate in those particular
Hmm.
moments, you know. And so, you know, all those things kind of come up, all those things.
Do you have any tips that you could share that some folks could use in those moments? Because despite your uh whether you are in
Yeah,
therapy or not, or at least a therapist or not, as a yoga teacher, you're going to encounter people having those
yeah,
types of experiences. Do you have any tips that you could share for
yeah,
other teachers out
for
there?
sure. Yeah. And I think even as a yoga teacher too, you can have a full blown like panic or anxiety attack. I remember my first
Been
time
there.
teaching, I wasn't even in my body. I don't even remember what the hell happened. And so
Yo.
I just got through. I remember sorry, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
know we're going off topic, but yeah,
No, it's that's right
I'm
on
like,
topic.
yeah, I'm not even regulated at all. I was like, just get me through this. Um, so one of the things that I would say to, I'll just introduce kind of like a grounding technique. And so to get us back in the present moment, what happens is I'll just say anxiety, for instance. How I look
Hmm.
at anxiety is like, just imagine yourself driving in a car and the anxiety's in the back seat that's whispering in your ear that has the best intentions for you, but gives you the worst advice. And so sometimes our anxiety can get fueled by whatever we're kind of like maybe looking at, smelling, touching,
Hmm.
tasting, X, Y, and Z. And so, and then if we get fueled by that, anxiety will say, hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to drive. I got it. You go over there. I got it.
Terrible driver.
Right? I got this. Right? And so, so anyways, just giving folks that kind of like an idea or even just kind of visual of what sometimes that happens when we feel like our anxiety has kind of taken over us and we feel like we're
Hmm.
kind of not in control. Just as sometimes that what happens. And so if I am kind of like in an awesome and I am having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, and I think there's two different ways. If I'm having a panic attack, most of the time there's no onset trigger. It just kind of happens. I could be like at Disneyland and be like, then boom, it just kind of just takes
Yeah.
me. Anxiety attack, for instance, can be onset by a specific trigger. So if I know that I'm about to go do this presentation, if I know the teacher just cued happy baby, right? And so recognizing a tip that I have, kind of like an instant grounding that happens, is activating some of your senses, right?
Hmm.
Because right now, what happens is when anxiety takes over, it gets fueled by memories, it gets fueled by shame, it gets fueled by different type of messages that we're kind of taught. So I would say, like, say if I'm there in a, let's say at a particular studio, I may actually get out of that particular posture. I may either get into Savasana or I may even get into some type of restorative space.
Hmm.
And I may actually do something like I go the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is a really popular grounding technique, right? And
Yeah.
so, five things that I can see, four things that I can hear, three things I can smell, two things I can touch, one thing that I can taste, right? And you don't even have to do the whole thing. You can just, okay, in the room, what's blue? What's blue? What's blue? What's blue? What's blue? What's blue? Oh, that's blue. That's blue. That's blue. That's blue. That's blue. And what happens is it kind of helps us kind of get back into the present moment that is
Right.
here. It honestly just helps just turn down the volume. And I think it's really
Ooh.
important when we're having anxiety or a panic attack is when we're just turning down the volume. That's all we're
Yeah.
doing. And so with a panic attack or even anxiety attack, also name it. I'm having a panic attack right now. I have an anxiety attack right now. Don't fuel it with shame. Don't fuel it with criticism. Don't fuel it. Don't fuel it. This is what's happening right now. Name something that's fine. Take a inhale and then a slow exhale it out. I'm fine. I am safe. I'm having a panic attack. I'm having an anxiety attack. Yeah.
That's all beautiful advice. I That grounding is so important, and I think
Hmm.
because I didn't realize that was something that I was incorporating into my classes until someone pointed it out to me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh. And then I realized later, I'm like, I was doing that for myself, but
Mm-hmm.
then integrating it into my classes, and it was actually helping people. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But it's so many of us are just flitting around here with
Yeah.
anxiety behind the wheel, not even really
Mm-hmm.
fully aware of it, and getting to be in the present moment
Yeah.
is a relief.
Yeah.
It's a huge
Yeah.
relief. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those of you that are out there teaching, even your students, they're probably feeling a lot of the same things that you are. And it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
teach them these things. Like,
Yeah.
it's beneficial.
Yeah.
Like,
It really
super
is.
beneficial. Oh,
And I
I'm
think
so
the
glad you
idea of
brought
like,
that up.
yeah, yeah. I remember this is kind of like this analogy or metaphor that we use in ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, which is a tool that I help folks kind of work through kind of like their anxiety and behavioral changes. And one of the things too that they mention of kind of like just anchoring down, which is honestly kind of a different word for like grounding,
Right.
is they mention that like, hey, if like you're on a boat and there's a storm that's coming, they don't keep going through the storm and like, oh, I'll muster it through, I'll just get through it. No, they drop an anchor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, let me just drop an anchor. Let me really kind of just settle in here and not move in chaos. So
Right.
right now, my mind may feel very chaotic. And so if I just anchor down and allow myself to kind of like, it's a body that's here, and then there's stuff that's happening around this body, And
Yes.
so, yeah.
I love that analogy. I'm
Hmm.
going to have to use that more, because I think grounding, people get it, but not always. So
Yeah.
I love having different ways to phrase it to help people
Mm-hmm.
understand. So thank you for
Yeah.
adding that too. I totally lost the question I was going to ask you. It was right there. Right there. Yes. And it wasn't even really a question. I just wanted to thank you for speaking on being your whole self.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because something I've also observed in myself and others is that we feel that there's a way that we should be. And I love that you brought so much attention to not necessarily focusing so much on the shoulds or on
Mm-hmm.
the supposed tos,
Yeah.
because the thing that came to my mind was the yoga voice.
Mm.
And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, as soon as you get into a yoga class, somebody's the person that's teaching suddenly has got this airy fairy voice on, and you're just like, you weren't talking to me like that just 5 minutes ago. What is
Yeah.
that? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I need you to be your full self in this moment. Now, if that is you,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. But if you are putting on a show for me right now, I'm probably
Yeah.
not coming back to this class, because
Yeah.
I want to be in practice with someone that knows exactly who they are
Mm-hmm.
and understands their voice and
Yeah.
is okay with letting their voice be what's heard to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times because I had noticed that even before even doing my 200 hour, I was like, why do people talk like that? I just couldn't understand it. And that was another thing of me thinking like, I don't fit in this. It's like, I don't
Mm.
talk like that. Like, even
Yeah.
like when I like even guiding a meditation, I will inject myself into it. Like, I'll still be
Yeah.
able to guide you, calm you, ground you, all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still going to hear tyranny in this. I've not
Mm-hmm.
turned on some voice that I'm putting on or anything. So I really just wanted to highlight that for anybody
Yeah.
listening too, is like, be you in these things. And if you're still figuring out you, that's fine. Take the time to figure that out, because the sooner you are understanding who your full self is,
Yeah.
all the things that you'll be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sky's the
Mm-hmm.
limit. Sky is the limit.
100%.
And because I like your wife is right. Like it's well, maybe not the without a cause. It's okay to be a
Yeah.
rebel as long as there's some
Yeah.
purpose behind it. Because
Yes.
I'm right there with you. I
Yeah.
don't like to sit in those supposed to or you
Yeah.
shoulds. Like why?
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose behind that? Like help me
Yeah.
understand it. And if you can't provide me a purpose, then I'm going to go against that and I'll tell
Yeah.
you exactly why.
Yeah.
There's
A
no
hundred
there's
percent.
always a reason behind it. It's never just a
Yeah.
just because. It's because
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not either ethical or it goes against
Yeah.
me or there's a better way to do something of that sort. There's always a reason. So yeah, I agree with
Mm-hmm.
you 100%. It's okay to be a rebel with a cause.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell her, it's like, it's always a cost. To tell her, I think because certain shoulds, when we start to should ourselves, sometimes I think that it might be rooted in perfectionism in a
Mm-hmm.
way, and I think that can create more stress and detachment of self. And
Yeah.
so that is something why I think I kind of push back a little bit, um, or why I seek kind of like understanding when it comes to these things. And so, and knowing that it's easier said than done, really, we kind of have to let go of certain messages and notice when they come up, and recognizing that who you are is so valuable and
Yes.
deserving. And so speak on that, honor that part of you, honor that. So, yeah, it's super, super important.
Big time. Big
Hmm.
time. So yeah, you've been bringing up just so many amazing things. So I really wanted to call that one out too because there's so many newbie teachers out that have it, and I've experienced it myself and still do. I've been teaching. God, I don't want to say the number, but it's almost been 9 years.
Hmm.
How has that much time passed?
I know.
Anyway, but even still, like coming into a new space or having brand new
Yeah.
people in class, I get those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, are they going to like me? Maybe I should do this.
Hmm.
Maybe I should do that. Or,
Hmm.
they might be expecting one thing. And then I have to just completely stop those thoughts and be like,
Yeah.
no, give them you. Give
Yeah.
them you. And if they don't like it, then that's fine. They cannot come back and that's okay. There's
Yeah. A
nothing
hundred
wrong with
percent.
that.
I think I say to folks, or even say to myself, perfectionism is the perfect lie. And so,
Ooh,
and so it's one of those situations where it's similar of having like those particular thoughts that saying I need to be like this, has to be perfect, has to look like this, and I have to please everybody that is here. Some people ain't
yes.
gonna rock with me, to what I'm looking like, to my clothes, to the music that I play, right? Some people
Right.
just aren't gonna rock with me, and there's other people that will. And so, really, I my right and my left will never. I just accept it, right, left. It's not going to be there. And I just started to smile when those things happen. You know what I mean? Just a smile, because it's like, again, perfection is the perfect lie. And
Yes.
so, and that's me. I'm this imperfect person, even in the therapeutic space. I think all my clients know that I'm. um, I've called myself kind of unpolished in a way, and
Same.
that's me. Yeah, I was
Diamond in
like,
the rough.
yeah, that is who I'm going to be, and I want to encourage and empower people to be able to do that, because I think sometimes, kind of in the therapeutic setting too, it's just kind of recognizing, can I love those parts of me, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and those parts of me make mistakes, you know what I mean? And so I'm not going to fuel it with criticism and judgment on myself. That's hurtful.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna laugh about it and keep moving. And I think I learned a little bit more about that when I started to practice even more stuff like off the mat, if that makes sense, right? And
Yeah.
so I've really kind of committed to learning more stuff off the mat this year, and it is again opened up my mind, my world even more, and again how I show up. in the
Mm,
therapeutic space, and also when I'm teaching an asana class. This is why
yes.
I smile whenever my right won't it will be my left that day. So yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And I'll even joke about that. So I'm like, it's okay to not get it right all the
Yeah.
time. I'm
Yes.
clearly up here messing up, and
Yeah.
we all are going to go through that. We're all
Yes.
extremely imperfect out here just trying to exist. I'm
Yeah.
just as
Yeah.
real as you. Not going to be no
100%.
perfect doesn't exist in this space. Just
Yeah.
imperfection, and I love it because it's beautiful.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I had to just marinate on that for a second because, like, oh, the way
Yeah.
that yoga has affected my life in such a positive way, it's just looking back, I almost wish I had experienced the mindset that I have on it now sooner
Mhm.
because of how truly beautiful it actually is. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that awareness just wasn't there. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're all here now and able to share this thing because
Same.
ooh-wee, the effect it
Mhm.
has. So with
Mm.
that said, I want to make sure that we have some time for you to
Yeah.
impart even more advice that you've already provided. Um, I ask this to everyone just to get the different perspectives that you all have and the different tips that you can share. So, what
Mhm.
advice would you give to somebody that's just now starting out their yoga practice?
I feel like I have a lot. I'm thinking, your 200 hours is not going to be the end all be all of your
Thank
practice
you.
and your study. I would also have to say that, um, yeah, again, I have the mindset of the slower you go, the faster you get there. And so really pace yourself in a way where you do not have to be like that IG yogi. You don't even have to be like your your 200-hour, instructor that was teaching you how to do X, Y, and Z. You don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
that person. And so, you know, um, and also too, you're probably going to be getting messages on, let's say, you got to memorize your stuff like ASAP. You have to get off the mat ASAP. You have to, like, all these particular things. No, you don't. Pace yourself. Take your time. Um, and I think I wish somebody would have told me that earlier. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, take your time. You're gonna learn Sanskrit when you get into that space. You'll be able to walk off of your mat. You will be able to find your voice. Listen to it. You know what I mean? It's there. Honor it. And so I would say, yeah, pace yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to rush. It's not a rush here.
Exactly. And even you brought up something about the expectations of memorizing it all and being,
Hmm.
walking around the classroom. You don't have to do those
Yeah.
things at
Yeah.
all.
You don't.
Like,
Yes.
if it's a comfort to you to have a notebook, have the notebook. I keep a notebook with all of my sequences in it right by my
Yeah.
side all the time
Yeah.
because I don't be remembering shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I have
I
my
some days don't want to be around people, even though my job
yeah.
is literally to teach
Yeah.
people. I'm going to
Yeah.
teach from my mat for most part.
Yeah.
Not to mention, that may help somebody that's experiencing trauma with someone
Yeah.
just constantly circling the room or being in
Yeah.
their proximity. It's
A
okay
hundred
to not
percent.
do those things. Too, like, take your time with being comfortable doing them, but also know that it's okay to not.
Yes, you can structure it however you want to. I have my
Yes.
iPad. I keep my iPad there the whole time.
Yes.
I'm going to pretend like I did Peloton, during the pandemic, and was introduced to a lot of different yoga teachers there. And they have like their iPad. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna use that. And so pretend like I'm an instructor on Peloton and be like, hey. And so yeah, and I think that, like, owning that part, right? And so that I don't
Yes.
have to completely just abandon certain things. And again, why? Who said? Does that make me a better instructor if I don't
Hmm.
have this paper, or, if I don't walk around, if I don't adjust,
Yes.
what is that, And so you can create your own rules. Do you,
Yes.
do
Oh,
you.
yes.
So, yeah. So
Beautifully
do
said.
you. Do you.
Absolutely. And then second part to that question is, what
Mhm.
advice do you have to those that are approaching the practice for the first time?
Mm. Recognize that there's so many different styles that is there. Um, and uh, maybe before you go to that studio, really kind of look at what is a vinyasa, and kind of look that up. What is yin? Look that up. What is restorative? And really
Yes.
kind of look that up. Um, and see, really, I think, kind of like what resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you feel brave and comfortable to talk to the instructor, go for it. I would encourage that as well.
We love
Me
that.
personally, yeah. I was like, me personally, I love it. I was like, I love it. Come to me, talk to me.
Come tell me
Um,
how I'm doing, please.
um, and again, and yeah. Also, feel free to kind of just like also bounce around to find your home,
Yeah.
and figure out, like, what studio, what location. It doesn't even have to be a studio. It can be like, hey, I just really want to do yoga outside. There's so many different things. I've even got introduced to folks who are doing asanas on like a surfboard, and I'm like, what?
Oh
That's
yeah,
crazy.
paddleboard
And
yoga.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so just different things, like, you know what I mean? You can kind of dip your toe in so many different things. You're not limited to just this, right? Um, and also too, I think, go in there with um, without this expectation that you have to look like your yogi that's next to you, or even the instructor. Um, Show up, on your mat with compassion, with grace, with laughter. You don't have to take yourself so seriously in those particular
Yes.
spaces. Um, and ask questions. You know what I mean? Again, go to the yoga teacher and ask questions. Not just like, how do I get into this particular posture, but what is yoga in general? What does that mean to you?
Mhm.
Um, you know, um, and again, because there's 8 limbs of it. So, you
Right.
know what I mean? Kind of just really kind of introduced into that. And also too, since I guess that was a shameful plug, there's 8 limbs of yoga. And so you look that up, just even just like on Google too. And maybe the asana doesn't resonate with you, but maybe the breath work does. Maybe
Right.
meditation does. You know what I mean? Maybe following some of the yamas and the niyamas, and seeing, how do I talk to myself? You know what I mean? Am I harming
Mhm.
myself by being very critical? How can I work on that? Right? 'Cause that's still
Mm.
yoga. And so, really considering that, if you're first time going into the space.
You you just laid it all out there. Just oh
Please.
yes. I'm over here like, yeah, I needed that. Like, yes, yes, there's so much more to it. Find what fits for you, because it
Mhm.
really could be any of the other limbs than
Yeah,
asana, because a lot of folks will stay away from yoga because they
yeah,
think it's just asana. It's like, oh, there's
yeah,
so much more to it. You can be a yoga
100%.
practitioner and never move your body in that way.
Yes, facts, facts. Yes, yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
Mhm, mhm,
Oh
mhm.
my goodness, Krystal, this has been fabulous. I am so thrilled to have had you here. We didn't even get a chance to talk about the sound stuff. I wanted to talk about the
Oh,
sound stuff, so we're gonna have to have you back
part two.
for at least to either have a chat for it or get a little
Mhm,
experience of it, because
mhm.
something, because I that is I love sound. I have a couple bowls. Some things expensive.
Oh, listen.
I broke one of them. Oh my god. I never felt so hurt for a material object in my life than
Yes,
breaking that crystal bowl. Like, you got to be
yes.
kidding me. And it was during a class too. I had brought them into a class.
Mm.
I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play my bowls for y'all. I start playing, and this one just wasn't doing something. I'm like, and the lights were all dim, so I didn't know that they had a big old crease in it or a crack in it. And I'm like, once the lights turned on and I realized what was going on, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Tears.
$200 to replace that thing. I'm like, it hurts.
It is so expensive. Oh my gosh. And taxing on the body, like it's a lot. But anyways, yes.
We'll definitely have a bigger conversation on this another time, for sure.
For sure.
Do you have anything that you'd like to plug at this time?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Krystal the Yoga Therapist. My YouTube channel, Yoga by Krystal. Or you can hit me up find me on my website at Therapy to Empower. You can email me, Krystal at Therapy to Empower, all the above. Whether you just want to say hi, how's it going? When's my next sound bath or collaborate, whatever. Say hi if you want. And I will come after, let's say early December after Thanksgiving. I'm actually going to be doing an intensive where I am going to be offering grief yoga and a sound healing meditation session. Because as we enter into the holidays, it can feel a lot of different emotions, specifically grief. I want to be able to have that offering after Thanksgiving.
Yes. Right on time. On time. Ooh. Oh, so many people are going to benefit from that. Oh, y'all heard it. Go sign up for that intensive. Do yourself and all of your relatives that you're probably not wanting to meet up with right now a favor and sign up for this intensive so that you can go meet up with your relatives. Ooh, girl, thank you so much for your awesomeness and sharing it with us here. I truly, truly appreciate you. For those listening, please follow her on all the things. All of those links and pages and whatnot will be in the show notes. So be sure to interact with Krystal as soon as possible. Like right now, go click on all the things. This show airs every Tuesday. So I will see you guys back next week or whenever it is you're paying attention to this. I don't know, but I'm glad to have you here. So thank you so much to everyone. Another extra thank you to Krystal. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Yoga in Black podcast. What did you think of this episode? Leave us a comment or a rating on whichever platform you're listening or watching from today, right after you subscribe. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at yoga.inblack, Facebook yoga-in-black, and TikTok yoga.in.black. Also, head to www.yogainblack.net for all your YIB needs. Next episode, I'll connect with Ashton Nix. New episodes air every Tuesday. And if you'd like to be on the show, fill out our waitlist form on the website. Be sure to click on Let's Talk from the menu. I can't thank you enough for all of your support. Really, this could not be done without you. Thanks for listening.